Hello everyone, my name is Jose Avalos, aka Dr. Logic8.
And I'm Troy Johnson.
And in this tutorial we will teach you how to use the Path Creator toy to make actual 2D platforming and actual 2D movement. Because if you remember in Disney Infinity 1 and Disney Infinity 2, you actually had to use scalable barrier blocks. But the movement was still 3D. So it was very difficult to make actual 2D platforming, but now in 3.0, using the Path Creator, we can actually do that. So let's show how we can actually do it. So first we need to go to the Creativity Toys category. And first we will place an action button that will trigger the 2D movement. Then we will need to make a target camera that will actually be the camera for making a 2D camera. And finally, we will make the actual path. So I'm just gonna erase this one a little bit and just make a straight up line. This should be more than enough. Oh, and I forgot an extra toy. We're gonna place a checkpoint so that when we start the 3D movement, we will place the player on the spline automatically. So, boop, boop. And now, how do we make a 2D platformer movement? It's actually surprisingly easy. For that, we need to make a logic connection between any Creativity toy. We're only using action buttons because they're easy to use. And select it to the path itself. And the Path Creator, and all we need to do is say, activate 2D character movement. In this case, it can be triggering player, the player who pushed the button. It can be all players, or it can be a specific player or a specific team. So for now, we'll just say all players. And now we'll also do it so also when I push the button, I will transport the person into the checkpoint in particular. So we'll use teleport player and we'll say all players. And let's push the button. Now let's try to move. I can only move left and right in any direction. And the amount of movement you have, it's only limited by the length of the path. So you're not going to be like looping back and forth. And now how do we exit this? There's two options. One is just entering and exiting the editor, in which case we return to the regular 3D movement. Oh no! Sorry.
Those buttons are just so enticing, you can't help but push them.
I know. Yeah, Olaf has an attraction to these buttons. Or we can make another connection so that the Path Creator, say press, restore 3D character movement, in which case you will return to the regular movement that we've been using in all of the tutorials so far. But now let's make it another like actual 2D camera. So also when I started moving on a 2D movement, so for that we need to new logic connection from the Path Creator and say 2D character movement activated. We will, by any player, we will select the target camera and say activate. And now we can see that we can only move left and right. You can see these lines where it shows you where the character is going to be moving because we're using a particular build from the game that is only for us, for Avalanche software. But you will not see that line on the regular game that you're going to be playing at home. So don't worry that you're going to be seeing these lines, because you won't.
Good thing.
I know. It is the greatest, right? And now you could see that we can only move strictly left and right on this particular spline, but we can also have a little bit extra liberty in case that you want to make players be able to move up and down from the path. So for that, we actually have one particular property in the Path Creator. So if we go to Properties and we say 2D Character Movement, it will say Width and Force 2D Character Facing. What does that mean particularly, Troy?
So Force 2D Character Facing is what you've actually been viewing already, as Jose has been moving left and right along the path, it basically only allows you to face directly one direction or the other direction along that path. You can't face perpendicular to it when this particular property is on. So that helps it with if you have characters that can fire blasters or throw ice crystals or snowballs, for example. You'll only really be able to throw them one direction or the other directly along that path.
All right.
If it's set to off, then you will have full 3D rotation of your character, and you can actually face the foreground or the background instead of just left or right along that path. That will allow you to maybe put targets or other obstacles or enemies that aren't directly on the path, but you'll still be able to hit them with ranged attacks and things like that.
Okay, that's good to know. And this particular width, it will be the number of units in which you can move to the foreground or the background in each direction. So in this case, if we had 4, it will mean that we can only move 4 units into the foreground and 4 units into the background. Let's check it actually in action. So we'll push our button again and we will do character movement. Now we can see that not only we can move left and right, but also we can move up and down.
But it still keeps you bound within those 4 units on either side of that path.
Yes, so now you have a little bit extra movement, but not so much that you can actually go to places the player is not meant to be.
Precisely.
And now one final thing you need to have into consideration is that even if you select 2D character movement for players, this does not affect enemies. Enemies will always move on a 3D movement range. So if you want to have the enemies like, at a particular range, you will have to use scalable barrier blocks on the areas where you actually fight enemies, not alongside then the whole stage. So that's something you need to keep into consideration.
Precisely. You can still make those enemies travel along that path, but once they perceive you or you start attacking them, they will go into their regular 3D kind of ranged area for their artificial intelligence, where that will take over and pull them off of that path.
Yeah, but you can still attack them like using range attacks or by using the property that we talked about before when we said 2D character movement. For 2D character facing. So if you want the enemies to move back and forth, you need to set this property off. And then you can face the enemies directly and attack them with range attacks. So that's another thing you need to have into consideration when you make these kinds of levels.
Precisely.
And well, that's really it. There's not much more that we can talk about how to make 2D character movement. As you can see, it's incredibly easy. And something I wish we had in 2.0.
Well, I'm excited for it now. One other thing to keep in mind is that you don't necessarily have to just make straight lines with these paths. You can make them curve, you can make them turn, you can make them go up and down in elevation if you want to have a better guide for how you're expecting to build.
Yeah.
But keep in mind that you can jump, and you're allowed to jump while walking on these 2D paths, and fall and all sorts of things like that. And you can still, it basically allows you to do vertical movement on these paths without restraining you or constraining you. It's just the side-to-side kind of horizontal axes that it does bind you along that path.
Yeah, so now as you can see, I'm moving up and down. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a straight line. So you can use this for really keeping players on their toes. Surprising with a new perspective change or a new camera. So man, this is so cool.
I'm really excited to see what all you community members will be making with these tools.
All right, so that's it for this tutorial. I hope you have enjoyed it. And remember, if you have any questions, please let us know in the comments or in the forums. Well, thanks for watching.
Have a good one. Thank you.